All right, this is the well-requested video on how I connected my coffee machine to my smart home. This is by no means an extensive tutorial because it is pretty complicated. I may post one on YouTube if there's demand for it, but let's get into it because this is going to take a while. All right, before we get into this, I want to give credit where credit is due. I'm using Tritter's plugin and code for this. Once I was about 10% through this project, I noticed he was solving the same problem, and it saved me a ton of time. So let's start with the coffee machine. This is the Nespresso Expert. It's a capsule espresso machine that I picked out for a few reasons for this project. The first one being the large water tank and the large capsule disposal tray. This allows for multiple uses before touching it or emptying it. The more important one though is it does have Bluetooth out of the box. While this sounds great, it actually is not the best experience, as the only way you could interface with the Bluetooth is with this app, and it's super not ideal. It's very clunky. It doesn't work really well, but it's something for us to start on and getting it integrated into our smart home so we could use it with automations and voice control. Let's dive into how. All right, so the first problem I ran into is I'm using Apple HomeKit, which only allows you to use devices that are authorized by Apple on your smart home network. This is a big problem because it limits your usability drastically. The way I solve this is using a piece of software called HomeBridge. Let's talk about what that is. HomeBridge is a piece of software that you can run on any computer. I'm using this little Raspberry Pi, and it will connect to your HomeKit and trick HomeKit into thinking that it's an authorized Apple device. You can then connect unauthorized devices to this HomeBridge, which you then can control through HomeKit. Let me show you how we utilize that for the Nespresso here. All right, so we have HomeBridge running on the Raspberry Pi now. This Raspberry Pi is connected to Wi-Fi, and then through that Wi-Fi, it's connected to my HomeKit. So we can now control whatever's running on the Raspberry Pi with our HomeKit setup. What we then can do is, because this Raspberry Pi has Bluetooth, is connected to the coffee machine. We can't have them talk together or anything, so we don't know what the language is yet, but we could have them connected, which is a good first step. All right, so this is the hard part. I got an old Android phone that could log all the stuff that it's doing, and I basically connected to the machine and sent every single command that I could, from make coffee, boil water, change temperature, logged all those, and then exported them to my laptop. I then figured out what those Bluetooth commands were, figured out what packets they sent, and figured out some security information I needed to translate to the Raspberry Pi. This is a massive oversimplification, but that's in short what I did. So then now that I know what code to put on the Raspberry Pi to talk to the machine, I can basically map those pieces of code to different events in my smart home using HomeBridge. So, for example, if I wanted to send a piece of code from the Raspberry Pi to the machine, I'd map that to a switch, that when I press that switch, it sends that code. If I want to listen to the machine, I could have a sensor that receives data from the machine. So, for example, if I want to open up this top lid here, I could look at a sensor and see my slider is open as I open it and close. I also have sensors for water empty, no capsules, etc. Same goes for a switch. If I have a switch called Americano, if I turn on this Americano switch, it'll effectively brew me a coffee because that switch told the Raspberry Pi to send that code to the machine. And the way that I automate it is basically turning off on and off those switches, as well as listening to those sensors and making conditional rules on it. That's that. Hope it wasn't too complicated.